Alrighty, so for Monday's last item of this week, as I said, the order is a bit reversed. You're going to analyze your template, right? So template analysis, and this process is really just going to help you get familiar with the code that's in your particular template because the more you understand it, the better you're going to be able to update it. And not that you need to update the design, right? But more that, and when you're updating the content of it, having at least a high level of how is your template creating the design that you're looking at will be really helpful. So we're going to do this in two parts. This is going to be the first part, and I'll go over what it will cover. Okay, and I've given you an example of the layout that you will use for your markdown. Okay, so in this case, what you're going to do, and I already have up in my VS Code, I'm just going to drop a few things here, is I have my P0 open like I showed you in the prior one. I have created a new file. So in this base directory, we call the root directory, I created a new file, readme.md. Now it's really important that you name this as I have. I only have the example one is because I was playing around with actually doing the work, but I wanted you to see that this is the file you want to create. Okay, so in this case, this will record your site inventory, right? And then we'll keep this in the same folder as your index file because the analysis you're about to do is going to be of your index file because everything you need to understand is in that index file for the work that you're doing here. Okay, so analysis, workflow, and commit. So you're going to do two required commits to track your progress as you inventory your template. So the first part will be the head section, okay? And the second part will be the top half, right? And in this case, we're going to look at it as far as functional blocks, and I'll show you what that means in a minute. Okay, but so you'll first do the head section, you'll do a commit, then you'll do the top half of the site inventory, then you'll do another commit, and then you will submit your commit history as a proof of doing this. Okay, so in this case, I've given you a link to the part one example, and I already have it up here. Okay. So what you can see here is this is your, this is just by the way, this you've been looking at several times in this class markdown that I've been providing. Okay. So now I'm providing a base markdown that you will then modify. And this is the starting code markdown code that you will use. Okay, so how do you get this? Now, you don't necessarily just grab this and copy it. First, what you want to do is actually look at it as markdown. And what you can do is hit edit the file. And in this case, it'll then convert the render, what you're looking at, to markdown. So then you can just select a copy. Okay, now I'm going to go over to VS Code. I'm going to paste that in. Oh, that have to be in the file. Okay. So this is a guide for how you will analyze your particular template. Now, again, this is just, and I'm going to go ahead and hit back here because you're not modifying this file, you're modifying the one on your local system. But I want to just go over what you're going to be doing here as far as this because your template, each of us have a separate template. So the challenge in this particular starter file is that yours may and most likely will be different. And so what you're going to do is use this as a guide to help you, but then modify as you need to based on your design. Okay, so the first section is the head section. So go through, and this is kind of what I showed when we did the copy over, where I already started looking at the libraries, and in this case, the external CSS and then the custom CSS if it's provided. Now, you may not have that. My particular template did. And you might wonder, well, how would I know that? And I actually talked about that, but let me specifically point this out. So for my template, okay, if I go into assets, right, I have the vendor bootstrap files, but I also have a CSS main.css. So this is the one that the template owner actually created. Okay, so this is custom CSS. Most of the time when we were learning, a matter of fact, all the time we were learning in our Code Along Bootstrap, we were learning the base classes, okay? But you have learned some general CSS. So you may or may not have a custom CSS. And then what you will be doing is analyzing the external libraries that are provided. Now, let's actually open up the index because remember, you're following along with the index here. So in this case, right, you're going to be looking at, and and you've maybe never heard this term favicon, what that is. Now, this is actually not an external thing, but the more you kind of spend time just looking at, oh yeah, what is that? And I'll just tell you now, as we're looking at the site, let me refresh it real quick because it actually should be this icon right here. So I'm not sure. Let me restart my server real quick. Yeah, so I'm not sure why it's not, but I can actually show you what it should look like because I actually was working on this last night and it showed up fine. And we're going to actually end up customizing this. By the way, you can see this for all other tabs that there's this little icon. Well, that's the favicon. Okay, so as in this example, now I'm not actually talking about libraries yet for this, but as you're going through this, spend a little time just looking at right what is in here. So if I wanted to see, hey, what is that favicon, I'd go into assets, I'd go into images, I would look at in here, oh, okay, favicon, okay, so that's the icon that I would see if it rendered. And again, I'm not sure completely why right now it's not, but I know once I push it, matter of fact, I could go look. Matter of fact, let's do that. Let me go actually look at my CIT. Oh, and if I didn't say this, I figured out why mine didn't work before, is I actually was using the wrong course number, P0. Ah, see here it actually is rendering. So it must be something locally because I'm pretty sure it works. So that is the favicon. So what I'm showing you here is really just the idea. And I'm actually going to go back now that I've done that. And I'm going to go, so this is me looking at the index.html. And then I'd go, okay, what is fonts? Okay, so there's some special Google fonts that were added to this, right? And then I'd go, okay, standard bootstrap stuff. So where we added a CDN, an external reference, this actually has those files loaded. And this is the AOS, the AOS, the Glidbox, Lightbox, Swifer, right? So this is where you would go through. So now let's go back to our template example, right? And identify it's this one, it's the external CSS. Like, what are we using? Because remember, what we're doing here is we're taking a template that designer of the template added in some additional functionality besides just what was loaded in Bootstrap. And now you just want to identify what that was. Okay. All right. So then once you do that, you go through and do a commit. Okay, so what I will look at is, how well did you cover the major things up in the head section? The more, I'm just going to tell you, the more you've do the work here, the better it will be once you go to modify it. So then you're going to do the top half of the site inventory. And I've just given you kind of some general sections you may find. Every site's going to have a nav menu, right? So for mine, here's my nav right here, okay? My navigation, my menu is here. And then he has some social links, right? And then I have a logo picture here, right? So then I'd want to go into my HTML and find where that's at. So I would scroll down. I go, okay, here's a header, right? So, okay, so now where is that header section? And this for me is where DevTools can get really handy. So I can go, okay, here's my header. So when I just roll over my header, and if you see what I'm doing here is I'm rolling my mouse over, and over on this side, it shows me when I'm there, this header contains all of the things that is in there, right? So would it be good to look at those classes there? Absolutely, right? Because within here then is my nav menu itself, right? I have a profile image, I have the name, and then within the name itself, looks like I have a site name, and then I have some social links, right? So I'd probably want to look at those classes, and definitely I'd want to look at the nav. So again, yours is probably going to be different, right? But I'm just giving you how you're going to approach doing this work. Now, in my case, the logo and the branding, right, was actually inside the header. So because I know I'm going to be doing a logo and header, I could include it on this side. Now, again, these are just examples, right? These are just examples of things that you look for. Okay, and then you'll do, again, if your site is different, and it very well probably is, then you could rename this. What most likely logo branding is common, navigation menu is common, some kind of hero section, right? And then maybe some kind of content section itself. Okay, so again, right, for me, now let's actually go look at mine. So if I roll, and this is a good thing to know how to do in VS Code, if I rolled up that entire header section, then I would get to main. And then in main, okay, I see this hero section, right? So then I'd want to go, okay, in main, I see a hero section, I see an image, right? I see this, oh, say Alex. Okay, so then I'd want to go over to my page. And again, this is where I kind of go back and forth between looking at the code, although I could do that here in DevTools, but also looking at the site and then right clicking and hitting inspect so that I could see, oh, okay, yeah, there is my hero section. Okay, so that is my main hero section. So again, see how this identified that, because that's a fairly common thing. Yours may be called something else. So part of this is identifying what lines that would be, right? So I could come over here and I could go section hero. I could row that up and I go, oh, 95 to 104. I don't know if I showed you that one on the last one, but that's the idea. And now the more time you can spend identifying what these classes are doing, right? Are they, and one thing I would look at is, are they bootstrap classes or are they custom classes? Now, one of the ways you can tell, let me just show you this, right? So as in that example, I was just going through, okay? Let me go P here. Let me just find it. Just take me a minute here, because again, there's a lot of code here. Oh, here we go. Okay, so in this case, I would scroll over, right? And then I would see that in this section, right, there's a hero class, a section, and a dark background. So I'd go, okay, dot hero. Oh, it's in the main. So what that means, if it's in the main, that means it's custom CSS. So my template happens to contain quite a bit of custom CSS versus using the bootstrap. Okay, which is fine too, because it understanding bootstrap will help you at least understand what classes are used for, because we're still using that concept to create the design. Again, just kind of giving you an example of how to move through here, right? Now, so you want at least have 4 sections that you've looked at. What are those lines that constitute that navigation menu or whatever section you're working on? Okay, and then logo, and then whatever your other section would be. I definitely know I have a hero section, right? So I know I have that. Okay, and then I have that. So I would go, okay, now here's where it starts to get repetitive, because for me, I know that based on the navigation, that this is actually going to an anchor link. And what that means, it's not a separate page. So if I go look at that, so let me actually go look at that now in mine. So let's actually go here, profile picture. Now this is where, okay, that section ends. Here's container. And if I'm not sure, this text is a way to help me identify. Okay, so it's an about. Okay, so if I find an about, okay, so here's where it looks, here it is. So if I roll that section up, it's 107 to 154. So it's not that you have to understand all the code in there, but at the highest level, that is the classes, okay, that create that section. And so the more I can just look at, oh yeah, so that's how that's done, it's going to be helpful to me when I go to modify it. Okay. Okay, so hopefully this gives you an idea. Again, I'm trying the flexibility is important here because each of us, and I've said this a couple of times now, have a different template, right? No, I'm sorry, all of us have a different template. So what we will do is we will finish this up in part 2. So once you identify those top half functional blocks, up to 4 of them, yeah, 4 total, right? So let's actually remember, right? So we nav and branding or logo is going to be everybody's going to have that. What these other 2 are called will be based on your template, but still, here gives you some things to think about and to understand. And oh yeah, I actually started doing mine. So these are, this is how it looked like. I've identified here's the name of mine, here's the version. We talked about version before, so this is within the expected versions. Right here are my bootstrap icons. Here's my animation and scroll. So that's my first head section, right? And then I showed, yeah, I do have favicon, I do have a custom CSS. And then I started into the nav, right? So in this case, I said, oh yeah, okay, my nav menu is actually part of the main CSS and identifies this behavior. Now, this is where you can use AI, Gen AI, to help you understand if you're not sure. Okay. But the more time you spend looking at it before you ask AI, because if you just go ask it without actually looking at the code, you're not going to be as effective when you go to modify it. Okay. All right, so do that. And then give me your commit history for your P0. This is all in your public, right? So make sure you end up pushing. What I will look for is these 2 commits, and I will look at your README file for how well you documented your particular template. Okay, reach out for help if you need it. Have fun with this because this will help you, as I've said, move into your project 0.